Hello friends, this is Pastor Larry from Oklahoma City, and the program is From the Front Lines. It's September the 13th, 2019, and I want to speak on the topic, dancing with the lawless. Imagine that you are a police officer. You know that I was a police officer back in the 60s in New York, so what I'm going to say really hits my heart deep. You're a police officer and you are seeking to arrest a young man who was in the process of committing an armed robbery. And so you've disarmed the young man and you're trying to put the cuffs on him, waiting for backup. You're all by yourself. But suddenly the young man turns and before you know it, he's got a chokehold on you. He's bigger than you are. He's one of these big dudes. And so a crowd is formed as you are struggling with this criminal. They're from his part of town, and they're rooting for him. Can you imagine? You're trying to arrest this dude, and they're rooting for the convict. You're gasping for breath, and it's kind of like, you know, you think you're going in and out from consciousness. Things are getting black, and why isn't anyone helping you? Why is this criminal being allowed to overpower you, and no one has come to your assistance? Well, let me give you the answer. The governor of the state has just signed a bill allowing citizens to refuse to help a police officer in need who is in the process of arresting somebody. Now, you might think that I'm making this up. I am not making this up. And if you're a police officer out there, my heart goes out to you. If you are in law enforcement, if you are in the United States military, or currently politically correct, insane society is not on your side. Thank God the President of the United States is on your side, but he's dealing with, he's trying to drain the swamp, and the swamp is filled with liars and perverts and people who are not on your side. So let me read from a Fox News report, quote, California's Newsom signs bill allowing citizens to refuse to help a police officer. Can you imagine that? Now, there was a law that made it a misdemeanor that carried a fine of up to $1,000 for refusing to help a police officer who requested assistance during an arrest. The Sacramento Bee, let me read from that, reported that the old law, the California Posse Comitatus Act of 1872, was common in the early days. However, Senator Bob Hertzberg, now, just imagine what party he's with. He's a Democrat from Los Angeles who sponsored this insane bill, called the old law a vestige of a bygone era. The law was employed, he said, to catch runaway slaves. Well, what was Governor Newsom thinking about? Sure, there are no longer any runaway slaves, no doubt about it, but there are sure a lot of criminals around, and a lot of police officers, a lot of female police officers, a lot of male police officers who are not, because of the budget shortage, they don't have backup, they don't have people with them, they're out there by themselves, they have their hands full. Don't citizens have any responsibility for the law and order in their own community? Why are we backing criminally endorsing citizens who are hindering the police from doing their job? So, in a world of lawlessness, those who maintain law and order are the criminals. That's a fact. Okay, we're living in a lawless world, and the real criminals are those who maintain law and order. Our society is looking at the police, at those who wear a badge, at those who carry a gun. They're the bad guys, according to this new paradigm. In a few months, November the 3rd, 2020, we will be voting on a president. That vote will determine whether or not America continues to be an asylum for people all over the world, or whether America quickly goes downhill. It's Election Day 2020. Now let me tell you this. Some Americans will not go to the polls. They don't think elections mean anything. They say, well, it doesn't matter. It's only my one vote. But let me tell you, this will be the most important vote that we have ever had. Some will not even know what the issues are. They think that they don't have special degrees in political science, and therefore they can't vote intelligently. Then there are some who say, well, they didn't vote in Bible times. The Bible doesn't tell us to vote or not to vote. And of course, they didn't have elections in the Old Testament because the Old Testament was a Hebrew theocracy. America was never meant to be a theocracy, so that shoots down that argument. In the New Testament era, we certainly don't read about voting because the Roman emperor was in charge. There was no voting for the emperor or against the emperor. He was seen as divine, and so the Roman Empire did not have voting. Christians were regarded with great disdain. Then there are others who claim to be born-again believers, but they hate Donald Trump, so they're not going to vote. They hate President Trump with such a vengeance that they would either not vote at all and thereby give their support to the other party, or they will vote and give their support to a Democratic candidate. Now, I don't understand how anybody who names the name of Christ can do that. There's a high-profile Christian leader whose name I will not mention. My issue is really not with him, but with what he stands for. I don't want to focus on him, but on what he said and did. He taught and encouraged people to vote for President Obama. That blows me away. Why? Because supposedly Barack Obama was good for black people. Now, I know a lot of black people who would contest that Barack Obama was not good for black people. He was the most divisive, racially oriented president we have ever had. He was a black man. I know a lot of black people are really unhappy that a black man who became a president did such a poor job. And by the way, I want to point out that this Christian leader that I'm speaking about is black. So, isn't that racism? A black Christian leader supporting a black president because he is good for the people whose skin color is the same as his, black. If I make skin color more important than the values a candidate holds, that's really racism. That's wrong for a black person. It's wrong for a white person. If I vote for a candidate because I'm white and that candidate is white, that's wrong. That's racism. Or if I encourage, as a black man, black people to vote for a black candidate because he's or she's a black person, that is racism. So the question is, what does a candidate believe? What issues does he or she support? Not what color is their skin. Today, however, we need to remember we do have the privilege of voting, and we're not under a theocracy. We don't have an emperor. We do have freedom to vote. Furthermore, there have been many thousands, countless thousands, men and women who have died on the battlefield to keep us free. So to give us the privilege of choosing our leaders. And if you don't vote, if you don't pray to God, you don't go to the polls, you're just saying, well, all those men and women shed their blood in vain. That's a horrible thing. People went out there in the trenches so that we wouldn't be speaking German, or so that we wouldn't be speaking Japanese, or so that we wouldn't be speaking Russian or whatever. So we see that we are in a time of lawlessness. In a time of lawlessness, there are no standards, there's no laws. Old laws and practices that have been rooted in the Bible, that have served society for hundreds and hundreds of years can be abolished at a whim. Designations like male and female no longer matter. Good is defined by lawless people. Now, when a lawless person tells you what is good, you can be sure that that is not good. Bad is defined by lawless people. So what has traditionally been known as the good and the bad has been redefined because we are living in virtually a lawless society. There is a word in the Greek New Testament, and the word is anomia. It means lawlessness. It is frequently translated, especially in the King James Bible, as iniquity. So when you see the word iniquity, remember it is the translation of the Greek word anomia, lawlessness. The Bible tells us that the last days will be characterized by anomia. Let me read 2 Thessalonians 2, verse 7. It says this, "For the mystery of iniquity, anomia, lawlessness, doth already work." I believe that 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 and verse 7 is speaking about right now. The mystery of lawlessness is already at work. If you listen to the Democratic candidates for president, you will see anomia. There's lots of lawlessness there. You know, some have told me that they see a coldness in the hearts of many professing Christians. Christians don't hunger and thirst for righteousness. Jesus said, "Blessed are those who hunger and thirst after righteousness." Have you seen someone who's really thirsty? He's really thirsty. She's really thirsty. They want some water. But do we see in our country a hunger and a thirsting for righteousness? Well, there's an explanation. The Bible gives it, and it's tied in with anomia. Matthew 24:12, "And because iniquity," anomia, lawlessness, "shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold." I would venture to say that the lawlessness in some people, some leaders like Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, and all of the Democratic candidates, they're lawless. And I think that's part of the coldness, the love of many waxing cold. We're in an era of lawlessness. We're also in an era of cold hearts where people are not crying out for the Holy Spirit to fill them, to empower them. And that's what's going to be, it's going to be like at the end of the age. Matthew 13:41 tells us this: "The Son of Man shall send forth his angels, and they shall gather out of his kingdom all things that offend, and them which do iniquity," anomia, lawlessness. God is going to remove the Democratic Party, the party of lawlessness. Matthew 13:41. That's what it tells us. Sooner or later, there's going to be a big net. They're going to be sucked out, and guess what? They're going to be thrown on the ash heap, and they're going to be burned. That's exactly what the Bible says. Well, somebody says, where do you find that in the Bible? Well, once again, the Democratic Party. It's the party of lawlessness. Which party is breaking down the old barriers, such as those found in traditional marriage? Which party is appealing to support from atheists and non-believers? In August of 24th, the Democratic National Convention had a big meeting in San Francisco, California, and they got the new platform out there, which is supported by atheists and secularists and agnostics. The Democratic Party is the party of lawlessness. It's so radical that it is supported by the SCA, the Secular Coalition of America. The SCA lobbies on behalf of atheists, agnostics, and humanists in matters of public policy, and guess what? They endorse the Democrat Party. You know, if you're a Christian, can you say that you are going to vote for a candidate from a party that is endorsed by atheists? Now, come on now. You got to change your mind. If you're one of those confused Christians out there and you claim you're going to heaven, you better check what it means to be a Christian. Christians back Christian causes. Christians want to save the lives of unborn babies. Christians don't want to support sex change operations. Christians don't want to give hormones to little boys and little girls because they think they might be something else than what God actually created them. If you're a Christian, do you favor the Democratic Party? Now, come on. Somebody's going to write me a hasty email and tell me how crazy I am. I answer your letter already. You're wrong. There's no doubt in my mind that anybody who supports a party that is endorsed by socialists, communists, atheists, people who murder babies, they're not on God's side. As a matter of fact, Moses said this in Exodus 32:26, "Who's on the Lord's side, let him come unto me." And that's my call to you today. It's a time for decision. It's a time for picking sides. It's like Jesus said, if you're not with me, you're against me. It's very simple. We live in a binary world. There's Christ and Antichrist. There's saved and there's lost. There's light, there's darkness, there's up, there's down, there's right, there's wrong. This is the time for picking sides. It's very easy. You don't need to have a PhD in political science to know who to vote for on November the 3rd, 2020. Very, very easy. You know, it used to be voting and picking a candidate. It was pretty difficult. You had Republicans, Democrats, Independents, so on and so forth. Now the issues are so clear. I pray that there will be such a outrage against the Democratic Party. If you looked at that silly debate last night and saw them stumbling around and some of the crazy things they want to do, that's outrageous. That's outrageous that America has ever had someone, groups like that, people like that, voting and trying to become president of the United States. Pray for America. Pray for the cause of righteousness. Pray that the doors will remain open to proclaim the everlasting gospel of Jesus Christ. We get a Democrat there as president, it's going to be difficult. We'll still proclaim the gospel, but it'll be something like being in China or Saudi Arabia or Egypt or wherever. God bless you. May God lead you and give you a wonderful weekend.